It's 10 p.m. in Rome. It is 1:20 CE. You have just stepped out of a tavern in the Suburra, and it is pitch black. Not modern city dark, where ambient neon signs, headlights, and LED streetlights warm the sky. We are talking total, heavy, suffocating darkness. The only light comes from flickering, soot-spewing clay oil lamps inside open windows, casting long, eerie shadows across narrow stone alleys. And it is loud, deafeningly loud. The roar of wooden wheels on cobblestones, driver shouts, the clacking of horse hooves, and the distant shouting of drunkards echo off 5-story apartment walls. You smell burning olive oil, wood smoke, roasted meats, stale wine, and open sewage. If you think nighttime in the ancient world was a peaceful, quiet affair where everyone lit a candle and immediately went to sleep at sunset, you are dead wrong. For a Roman citizen, night was when the city's true engine turned on. It was dangerous, chaotic, thrilling, and utterly exhausting. Today, we're exploring what actually happened in the streets and bedrooms of Rome after the sun went down. The illegal midnight traffic, the high-stakes gambling in shadowy taverns, the threat of street gangs and falling chamber pots, the high-society drinking games, and the night watchmen fighting fires in the dark. Let's go! Here is the first shock about ancient Rome at night. If you were trying to sleep, you couldn't. During the daytime, Rome's narrow streets were crammed wall to wall with over 1 million pedestrians, market stalls, litters carrying wealthy elites, and street performers. It was total gridlock. So, back in 45 BCE, Julius Caesar passed a law called the Lex Julia Municipalis. This law banned all heavy commercial wheeled transport, delivery carts, construction wagons, supply trucks, from operating within the city limits during daylight hours. The moment the sun set, the gates opened. Thousands of iron-rimmed wagons loaded with grain, amphorae of oil, building stone, and livestock flooded into the narrow, winding cobblestone streets. The noise was legendary. The Roman satirical poet Juvenal famously wrote that the night traffic alone drove Romans insane from sleep deprivation, declaring, "Most sick people here die from insomnia. The roaring of the wagons in the narrow streets would pull sleep from a dead man." If you lived on the second or third floor of a cheap insula or apartment, your room vibrated all night long from iron wheels grinding on stone inches from your wall. If you were brave enough to actually go outside at night, you were taking your life into your hands. Rome had zero municipal street lighting. If you had to walk home, you carried a tiny terracotta oil lamp, or lucerna, that produced about as much light as a single birthday candle, while filling your nostrils with acrid olive oil smoke. This darkness created 2 major lethal hazards. First, crime. Street muggers, footpads, and organized street gangs, or grassatores, owned the dark alleys. Even bored, wealthy Roman aristocrats, including a young Emperor Nero, were notorious for putting on disguises at night, roaming the streets, jumping unsuspecting citizens, and throwing them into the sewer drains for fun. If you were wealthy, you never walked alone. You hired an entourage of slaves carrying blazing torches or servi precursores and armed guards to clear a path. If you were poor, you ran, stayed close to wall corners, or simply locked your door and stayed inside. Second, death from above. Most Roman insulae didn't have indoor plumbing on upper floors. At night, residents frequently dumped the contents of their chamber pots, or metella, straight out the window into the street below. If you were walking down a dark alley under an open window, getting soaked in waste was a daily risk. It was such a widespread issue that Roman law had a specific civil offense called actio de effusis vel deiectus, which legally allowed you to sue a building owner if you were struck by night waste dropped from a window. So where did the ordinary working-class Roman go for nighttime entertainment? They went to the Popina or Calpona, the ancient equivalent of a dive bar or pub. Because plebeian apartments were cramped, dark, and lacked cooking facilities, workers spent their evenings in these low-ceilinged, smoky taverns. Here, citizens gathered around oil lamps to drink cheap wine, posca or wine sweetened with boiled grape juice, eat salted ham, olives, and bread, and gossip.
Gambling was technically illegal in Rome except during the festival of Saturnalia, but inside these shadowy popinae at night, everyone gambled. They played games using knuckle bones, astragale, or bone dice, tesserae, rolling them on stone tables. Fights broke out so often over cheating that tavern walls in Pompeii are still covered in graffiti of men yelling at each other over dice rolls. After drinking, many citizens visited the lupanar, brothel. Roman brothels were easily identifiable at night by distinct terracotta oil lamps carved in suggestive shapes hanging outside their doors, or carved stone directional indicators embedded right into the street pavement. If you were a patrician, a wealthy Roman, your night looked completely different. It revolved around the convivium, dinner party, which began in the late afternoon and stretched well past midnight. After eating courses of dormice, oysters, roasted meats, and exotic fruits while reclining on plush couches in the triclinium, the real night began with the commissatio, a structured late-night drinking session. The guests would vote on a magister bibendi, the toastmaster or master of drinking. This person held absolute power for the rest of the night. The toastmaster decided the exact ratio of water to wine for the evening. Drinking unmixed wine was considered barbaric by Romans. How many cups everyone had to drink per round. The order of toasts and topics of discussion. While slaves refilled cups, guests listened to poetry recitations, philosophy debates, music, or watched jugglers and dancers. It was a mix of intellectual posturing, political networking, and heavy drinking that lasted until the early hours of the morning. Underneath all of this nighttime activity was a constant, terrorizing reality: fire. Ancient Rome was a giant fire trap. Thousands of apartments built of timber and dry brick were crammed together, and inside every single room, people were burning open oil lamps, tallow candles, and charcoal braziers for heat and light. One knocked-over lamp could, and frequently did, burn down entire neighborhoods while the city slept. To combat this, Rome relied on the Vigiles Urbani, the watchmen of the city. Established by Emperor Augustus, the Vigiles were a force of over 7,000 freedmen who acted as a combined police force and night fire brigade. Divided into cohorts, they patrolled the dark streets of Rome every night from dusk till dawn. They walked the alleys carrying leather buckets, ame soaked in water, axes for breaking down doors, hooks for tearing down burning roofs, and large blankets soaked in vinegar, centones used to smother flames. If you heard shouts in the street at 2 a.m., it was often the Vigiles spotting smoke, kicking in a door, and forming a human bucket line from the nearest public fountain. When sunrise finally hit the 7 hills of Rome, the night shift came to an end. The heavy supply wagons trickled out through the city gates before the daytime traffic ban began. The Vigiles returned to their barracks. Tavern doors swung shut, street cleaners washed down the stone roads, and exhausted Roman citizens headed to work after another night of deafening cart traffic, dark alleys, and smoky oil lamps. Modern night is designed for rest, entertainment, and quiet. But in ancient Rome, night was when the city showed its true, raw colors. It was a 24-hour survival exercise powered by muscle, iron wheels, vinegar, and cheap wine. Could you survive a single night in 2nd century Rome, walking a pitch-black alley in the Suburra with nothing but a single oil lamp and a prayer? Let me know in the comments below. Drop a like if you enjoyed this trip through history, and hit subscribe to join us next time on The Roman Citizen.